How's it going, everybody? This is my Timewalking Mage Tower guide for Unholy Death Knight. We're going to be discussing talents, gear, boss abilities, DPS priority and kill order, consumables and macros, and at the very end I will include an uninterrupted fight to demonstrate what I'm discussing here. The first thing I want to talk about are talents. I took Clawing Shadows, Unholy Blight, Asphyxiate, Soul Reaper, Spell Eater, Unholy Pact, and for my last talent I took Unholy Assault. Now I know that there are a lot of guides that suggest you take Army of the Damned to reduce your Apocalypse and Undead Army cooldowns. For me personally, I didn't really feel like that was very beneficial. In my case, Agatha was still casting Dark Furies that I was unable to use Apocalypse on because it was still on cooldown. So what I decided to do instead was use Unholy Assault to absolutely maximize as much damage as I could when I did have my Apocalypse or my Army of the Dead up. Now there's been a lot of discussion as to what gear is necessary to complete this challenge. I've seen plenty of videos doing this challenge in all Shadowlands gear. I've seen videos of people doing this in Siege of Orgrimmar gear, PvP gear, crafted gear. In my opinion, this is a challenge that can be done in any gear. I will capture a screenshot of my standard set that I use, which is Shadowlands gear. It's not entirely optimized. I do have a few BIS pieces, but that's about it. That is not the set that I used to complete this challenge. I used mostly green gear that had been bought off the auction house. I paid maybe 2,000 gold for it. Most of the pieces ran me about 10-15 gold, and then there were a few that were kind of up in the couple hundred gold range. That being said, you can pay absolutely nothing for a set to do this, and you won't need a carry. You don't have to pay someone for it if you go into Siege of Orgrimmar a couple of times, and you do Nighthold and Emerald Nightmare for trinkets. In fact, you could even get some really nice trinkets out of Hellfire Citadel. And any character who is level 60 or so and is using very standard 60 gear can blast through that content like it's nothing. So this won't cost you anything if you don't want it to. I would say that I did get a slight edge from the lower gear because of some of the enchants that I used. But I think what it really comes down to is you need to know the mechanics, you have to know the timers, and you have to be prepared for them when they happen, as well as any sort of outliers you need to be able to react to very quickly. And as I go through the video that I took of my run through this, you will see that it was very clean for the most part. I did make some mistakes, but you really do just need to know this fight. Now, the lower tier set, which is what I killed the boss with, is going to have a couple of outliers on there, namely the trinkets that you're going to have to be prepared to fill in for if you don't have those, and just use whatever you got. The first is the Tooth Warhorn, which is an heirloom item. It gives a chance on melee attack to grant Demon Bane, increasing strength by 37 and all damage against demons by 10% for 15 seconds. If you score a killing blow while this effect is active, its duration is extended by 8 seconds up to the original duration. I got this, I don't even know how long ago. I'm sorry I can't tell you how you do get it. I'm sure you can look it up and find that out. The second is one of my BIS items for Unholy Death Knight, which is the Inscrutable Quantum Device. This is an item that I myself am not entirely certain exactly as to how it works, but I believe that it's going to give you a stat buff based on your 2 highest stats, and then I think that it can also give you execute damage for various NPCs if they're within that range. Now on to the boss's abilities. Agatha is going to summon a series of demons. She's going to have an ability called Shadow Stab, which she's pretty much just always going to use. It's an auto attack that deals low shadow damage. She's going to use Agatha's Fury, which is going to add an AoE on the ground whenever an imp is killed. All you have to do is move out of it. The most important thing that she's going to cast is called Dark Fury. It's a stacking dot that will channel until interrupted. The spell also places a shield on Agatha that must be broken before she can be interrupted. The shield cannot be broken while Umbral Imps are present. Effectively, you're going to have to DPS this down as quickly as you can and then interrupt her. You will have instances where this overlaps with various Umbral Imps that she spawns. If this happens, you have to kill them before you can DPS that shield down. Agatha's going to summon a series of imps, and the kill order on these is what's going to make or break your scenario. So, as far as your target priority, you are going to focus first and foremost on any Umbral and Smoldering Imps that are up. Your main target here is the Umbral Imps, but they all spawn together anyway, so your AoE is going to cleave them all down. Then is going to be Dark Fury, and the reason why this takes second place is because if there is an Umbral Imp up, Agatha will not take damage and you will not be able to burn down her Dark Fury shield anyway. Once her shield is down, you're going to interrupt her. Your third priority are Imp Servants. They're the ones who heal Agatha. They are at the bottom of this priority list because it's not going to matter if you kill them if she still has her Dark Fury up and she's still applying her damage over time to you. It's not going to matter if the Umbral Imps are up because her Dark Fury shield is not going to take any damage anyway, regardless of whether or not the Imp Servants are up, and you are still going to be receiving that stacking damage over time. Your absolute bottom priority is going to be Fuming Imps, and while you don't want them to explode everywhere on the map, you should be able to kite them or DPS them in such a way that they are not going to be your first target if any of the other three things are going on. So she'll summon Umbral Imps. They spawn in sets of 1 to 3 and teleport and prevent the boss from being harmed. This is going to be your single highest priority target in this entire scenario. It doesn't matter if you have healing imps, they don't matter. It doesn't matter if she has Dark Fury up, that doesn't matter. If you don't kill these imps, she will not take damage whatsoever, and any other damage that you may do to her is going to be completely irrelevant. And they'll chain cast fireballs onto you. Effectively, you're going to burn these down at the same time, and I will show you how to do that later. So you shouldn't have to worry about it too much, but effectively what you're going to do to handle this is cast your anti-magic shell so that you can counter the stacking debuff. You're going to use Unholy Blight to apply an AoE damage as well as your Virulent Plague. And you're also going to cast your Dark Transformation, which is going to allow you to do basically a straight line of AoE damage between you and your pet, and keep basically everything between you and your minion to maximize this damage. Agatha's also going to spawn some Fuming Imps, and what they will do is chase you down, and once they're within a certain range of you, they're going to pop an AoE. You can either try to DPS them down as quickly as possible, which is something that I did whenever I could within the scenario, or you can pre-select an area within the zone, which is also a strategy that I used in the case that they weren't your top DPS priority, so that when they die, the AoE that they leave is out of the way. Now, something that is important to bear in mind here is that you can stack this AoE. You don't have to just drop it everywhere across the map. You can stand in it for a little while from a previous Fuming Imp while another one is running up to you, and it's not going to do a ton of damage to you. Obviously, you're not going to want to stand in it the entire time. Don't stand there for too long, I would say. But if you have enough time to have an imp run up to you and then trigger its explosion and then die there, that's all you need to do. You can get out of there. The last type of imp that you're going to encounter is called an Imp Servant. It's basically going to run up to the boss and heal her. She can get a significant amount of healing from these guys if they are left unchecked for too long. With that being said, these are going to be your second least high DPS priority in the scenario next to the Fuming Imps. Fuming Imps are bottom, then Imp Servants, then Smoldering Imps, then Umbral Imps from least to greatest priority. This is where I feel a lot of people get confused as to how the scenario goes because they see the boss being healed, they sort of freak out a bit, they forget about any of the other imps that happen to be up, unless they're fuming imps, and then they kind of spaz out and die. That's definitely how I reacted to the scenario my first few times as well. The way that you need to view this is if the boss has Dark Fury up, that's your number one priority. If there are Umbral Imps up, they are your number one priority, even if the boss has Dark Fury up, because you're not going to be able to do anything to Dark Fury if the Umbral Imps have her invincible. Once her Dark Fury is down and you can interrupt her, then interrupt her. It doesn't matter if she's being healed by Imp Servants or not. The way that I handled this scenario was by actively thinking to myself, fuck it, let her heal. If the Imp Servants are up and there's anything that's not a fuming imp up, that takes your priority. A lot of people recommend that you use Death and Decay to handle the Imp Servants. I did not do that. I used Chains of Ice the moment that they spawned to slow one down. That way I could focus all of my DPS on the one that was not chained. At the point where they got close to her, I used my Death Grip to cancel the cast of one, and Asphyxiate to cancel the cast of the other. As you'll see in the clip that I included, there were one or two spots where I didn't do this perfectly. But I did it well enough, and you can do it well enough to where you don't necessarily need to worry about using Death and Decay. The only reason why I say that is because I found that in the runs where I did try to use Death and Decay, my cooldowns were actively fighting against me, and I wasn't able to do the kind of AoE damage to get them down in time that I wanted to, so I found it a lot easier to prevent them from getting to her in the first place, and then canceling them as they did get to her in the second place. You will see in my playthrough that there might have been one or two points where they did get close enough to her to get her heals, and that's where I deferred to the strategy of fuck it, let her heal, and I focused on all of the other mechanics before I even cared about them. Now on to consumables and macros. So for my consumables, I used Tenebrous Crown Roast Aspect to bump up my haste a little bit, Flask of the Undertow to bump up my strength a little bit, Battle Scarred Augment Rune to also bump up my strength a little bit, Potion of Prolonged Power, which bumped up all of my stats by about 40 for 1 minute. For my weapon and armor buffs, I used my Shaded Sharpening Stone because I had a bladed weapon, and a Heavy Desolate Armor Kit for my armor. You can also use a Sylvan Elixir, which I also did, that bumps up your output by, I believe, 10% for the entire run until you die. And then you can also use Drums of Deathly Ferocity to bump up your haste, basically as a mini hero. Although, unfortunately, by the time I beat the boss, I ran out of the few that I had, so I wasn't actually able to capitalize on this myself. I'm going to leave a list of my macros down in the comments section, but effectively what I did was I targeted Agatha and casted a Mind Freeze as one macro, so that I didn't accidentally target any other character. My next macro was to target Agatha, cast my Apocalypse, then use my Drums of Deathly Ferocity when I had them, and also use my Inscrutable Quantum Device. Do that all at the same time, so that I could have basically one giant burst of DPS. Then I used Target Imp Servant and cast Chains of Ice. That way I wasn't going to be casting Chains of Ice on anything that was not an Imp Servant, and that was the only thing that I felt needed to be Chains of Iced. And finally, I cast Dark Transformation, use Potion of Prolonged Power, and cast Anti-Magic Shell. That way, anytime I used my Dark Transformation, I would always use my Anti-Magic Shell, and if my Potion of Prolonged Power was off cooldown, that would be used as well. Now that the structure is out of the way, we're going to play through my scenario and show where I used the methods that I discussed as they happen. So as we're starting off the scenario here, I'm setting the boss to my main focus so that I can always see when she's casting. I have a weak aura set to alert me when my minion spawns and dies. I'm basically popping all the consumables that I need to. I'm just getting set up right now. I'm standing behind the boss, and I'm getting ready to cast Army of the Dead. We're basically going to blow all of our cooldowns in this first opener here. So Army of the Dead, Apocalypse, Unholy Assault, Blight, Dark Transformation. That's all happening right now. I'm not too worried about the various imps that are in the area here. They're all being whittled down by my AoE. I can see that the Imp Servants are running up, so I Chains of Vice one, and I just focus DPS the other. I don't have anything else to worry about right now in terms of casts or other imps. I brought that Fuming Imp back there just in case he did pop, he'd be out of the way. And go right back to the Imp Servant now that he's dead. I'm back on Agatha now. This is a pretty standard rotation. I'm using Death Coil as well as my Clawing Shadows. Getting some passive damage off of my trinkets and such. She just cast Dark Fury. I know that it's going to take me 3 Clawing Shadows with my various pustules and then 1 Death Coil to burn that all the way down, and as soon as it's burned down, I interrupt her. I'm walking the Fuming Imps back. She's basically casting everything at once here. So the way that it overlapped, I was still able to get a Chains of Ice off on one of the Imp Servants, and then I cast my Unholy Blight as well as my Dark Transformation and Anti-Magic Shield when all of the Umbral Imps spawned. So I basically just burned them all down together. Just doing standard DPS on the boss again. I see another Fuming Imp. I'm walking it back, planning on DPSing it, but just in case it doesn't, it'll be out of the way. Back on the boss again. Her Dark Fury's up. This is not an in-between time, so I'm able to cast my Unholy Assault as well as my Apocalypse so that it burns down her shield all at once. I then prioritize the Imp Servants again. Boss is not the priority right now. I'm just worrying about all of the ads. I get the Imp Servants down, and I'm back onto the Umbral Imps with my Unholy Blight and my Anti-Magic Shield / Dark Transformation combo. Back on the boss now. I can see that she's got a couple of casts coming up. I'm not worried about it. I'm always moving because she's putting AoE everywhere. She's thrown up her Dark Fury and a couple of imps are coming up, but I prioritize the Dark Fury, burn that down and interrupt her. Both of these imps are up on her now, so I use Death Grip and then Asphyxiate on the other one. Wait for it to get off cooldown. As you can see, I dropped off that Fuming Imp so that he blows up way out of the way. I don't have to worry about it. Finally get this Imp Servant down, and we're back on Agatha. I can tell that my minion has died, so I resummon him. Pop my Anti-Magic Shell and Dark Transformation, so I'm doing my AoEs, and I'm reducing my damage taken. Fuming Imp, I'm walking it back. I'm prioritizing the Imp Servants over him. I'll walk him right over to where the other one died. He dies out of the way. I see that Agatha had her Dark Fury up, so I prioritized that over the Imp Servant yet again and interrupted her. Imp Servant's down, don't have to worry about him again. Dodging AoE. Just burning her down, that's a nice slow burn. She hits 50%, so she phases into phase 2. Now she's going to start hopping back and forth between the map here. I maintain the same strategy. I'm dodging all of these boulders. If you get hit by one, it's going to stun you and do a massive amount of damage. So it could be a potential, or very likely, I should say, loss. I see that she summoned all of the Umbral Imps. I was able to slow down one of the Imp Servants, but I used my AoE Anti-Magic Shell to start burning. I got most of them down. I'm still focusing these imps over the boss. Her Dark Fury's up. My Unholy Assault and my Apocalypse are on cooldown, so I'm just using my standard 3 Clawing Shadows and a Death Coil to get that whittled down so I can interrupt her. Fuming Imp popped up. I killed him. No biggie. Now, what you can do is you can heal off of your minion for about 25% health, so there are a couple of times where I intentionally kill him and then resummon him. Imp Servants are up. I Chains of Ice one, focusing damage on the other, and I'm back on the one that I slowed down. Umbral Imps, so I'm popping my Anti-Magic Shell / Dark Transformation so I can do fat AoE. I was very lucky here. I got knocked into the lava, which would have done damage to me, except I had my Anti-Magic Shell up. I was able to get out of there in time and kill all of the ads here. I'm still dodging these boulders like it's my job. I'm burning down her Dark Fury with my Unholy Assault and Apocalypse. She phases, so I'm focusing on the Imp Servants again. Another Fuming Imp pops up. I don't really care about him all that much, but I am still walking him over to the same area where the other ones have died, just in case. Maintaining damage on the boss. There's nothing else going on here, so I'm just doing as much DPS as I can. More Umbral Imps, so I use my Unholy Blight, Anti-Magic Shell, Dark Transformation combo. Just burning them all down. They're number 1 priority right now. Back onto the boss. Another Fuming Imp. I'm walking him back. I'm dodging this boulder. Imp Servants. Slowing him down with Chains of Ice. DPSing the one that wasn't slowed. I use my Death Grip to cancel him out. Asphyxiate on this one so he can't get any heals off. Her Dark Fury's up here. I'm close enough on the Imp Servant that I feel I can comfortably both kill him and then focus on the Dark Fury, which is what I ended up doing with my 3 Clawing Shadows and Death Coil. She spawns a Fuming Imp, which I start to walk back to the Fuming Imp pile. Again, we have our basically everything happening at once, which was lucky timing in a lot of respects. So I popped my Unholy Blight, Anti-Magic Shell, Dark Transformation, focused down all of the Umbral Imps, and then back onto the Imp Servants. I'm not even worried about the boss right now. Now I'm back onto the boss. I see another Fuming Imp. Just going to walk him back. He's my priority over the boss. Luckily, I'm able to DPS him down before I have to worry about it. So I'm back on the boss. There's nothing else going on. Dodging AoE. She phases again. Now what you'll notice is that I pan my camera back all the way while I'm facing the boss so that I can see the boulders as they're coming toward me. Some people like to stand on the boss and then face toward where the boulders are coming from. I found that was not helpful for me. I've got my Imp Servants, who I'm prioritizing over the boss. I Death Grip one, DPS him down. I see the other one, DPS him down. Pop my Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, Anti-Magic Shell combo. Burn everything here down, because I can't damage the boss while it's all up. As well as the fact that I'm taking damage over time. DPSing the boss, dodging the AoE. Dodging my boulders here. As you can see, I stand in this Fuming Imp pile a little bit. Doesn't hurt me all that much. Chains of Ice on the Imp Servant. DPS the other Imp Servant. Zone the Fuming Imp so that he's in a safe place. Asphyxiate on the other Imp Servant. DPS him down. Dodging my standard AoE as well as the boulders. Now I get my 3 Clawing Shadows and Death Coil onto the boss to burn down her Dark Fury, and then I interrupt her. My health's getting a little low here, but I'm not panicking. I see all of the ads here, the Umbral Imps, so I use my Unholy Blight, Anti-Magic Shell, Dark Transformation combo. I'm burning everything down. DPSing the boss as I'm going. I do see some Imp Servants here, so I Chains of Ice one to slow him down, and then I start DPSing the other one. He's down, so I'm back onto the one that I slowed. I'm always moving my camera so that I know where the boulders are and if there are any other ad spawns that I haven't noticed. I'm back onto the boss. As you can see here, my Army of the Dead is up and I can cast it. I made the choice not to do so here. I was afraid of burning the boss into another teleportation, and I was afraid that that would overlap with some of her other imp spawns, and I did not want that. She's got her Dark Fury up. I burn it down, interrupt her. Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, Anti-Magic Shield combo. Everything's kind of happening at once here. I do see that the Imp Servants are coming up. They're my first priority at this point in time, but that's only because I'm doing enough AoE that I know that I'm burning down all of the Umbral Imps as well. Another Fuming Imp. I walk him back to the Fuming Imp pile, and now I'm back onto the boss. Dodging my AoE. My minion dies, so I resummon him. Boss phases, so I'm running back to her and dodging boulders. She's down to 4%. I do not panic here. I do not try to burn her down as fast as possible. I don't tunnel vision. I maintain mechanics. Slow down Imp Servant, DPS, and Death Grip, the other one that I did not slow down. I don't care if she's at 2%. If I do not focus on this, I could definitely wipe. I cast my Unholy Blight Anti-Magic Shell Dark Transformation combo because her Dark Fury's up. I burn it down, interrupt Agatha, start DPSing, and it's in the bag. This fight goes by extremely quickly. You need to consider any add-on that you have, Deadly Boss mods, Weak Auras, whatever, as a backup only. You need to have a rough idea of what the timers are. You have to have a rough idea of what your visual cues are. You need to know how to handle each of those situations, and you have to be able to adapt in real time in case any of them overlap. The last thing I'll say about this is that this is a challenge that anybody can do, but you have to be dedicated to it. It doesn't matter if you're going to buy the gear, it doesn't matter if you're going to grind old content, it doesn't matter if you're going to do it with Shadowlands gear. There's no way to buy your way through this scenario. You need to know it, you need to know it well, and you need to be able to execute it properly. Occasionally you can afford to make certain mistakes, but for the most part not. This is going to require a lot of dedication. Do not go into this thinking that you're going to knock it out in 20, 30, or 50 tries. Sometimes there are people who are good enough to do that. The majority of us are not. Don't hold it against yourself. Don't hold it against the game. This can be done, and it will be done if you try to make what you have work for you based on your play style. Good luck.